Now, we all use Google Maps. It's become such an integral part of our life. But it's not every day we get to meet the man behind Google Maps. But as luck would have it, I am joined with the man who's making Google Maps a little bit smarter every day. I'm joined by Ed Parsons. Ed, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on WION. Let me ask you, as Chief Geographer of Google Maps, it's your job, of course, to make the maps a little bit smarter. My question is, tell us how you do that. What's your inspiration behind making Google Maps smarter? What inspires you on a daily basis?
Believe it or not, the inspiration is our users. We want to make Google Maps something that people will come back to every day and find a useful companion. So it's beyond just navigation now as to being something that helps you in your day-to-day lives. You know, do you need to leave for your commute half an hour early because there are traffic problems? Those sorts of answers that you'll keep coming back to is what we're trying to make Google Maps become.
So tell us a little bit about the evolution of Google Maps in the last few years. How did it exactly start? And take us through that journey, if you will.
Well, I guess like many mapping platforms on the web, we started in providing a mechanism for local search. So if you were searching for a local business, a pizza restaurant, or you were searching for a plumber, where you were was a very important part of that search, because clearly if you're in Hyderabad, you don't want to find a pizza restaurant in Delhi, so you want local restaurants. So that was the prime motivation, and that's still really much of what we try to do, is to provide that contextual interface to search. So beyond that, we've added more and more content, more and more detail, much more things like imagery to make the experience more immersive. We regard imagery, and particularly Street View, as that final level of zoom. You come all the way down from space, and this is what it feels like to be on the street corner.
Could you also tell us in detail how you use Google Maps in your daily life?
Well, I use it. I live in London, so I use it when I commute into the office. It will tell me, what time my next train is, if it's on time or not. Moving around London, going to visit offices, going to places that I've not visited before, I'll type in the address and be given the directions there. At the weekends, going on trips with the family, finding out local restaurants, museums, places to go. It really is that companion. It's something I do use every day.
So do you think since Google Maps exploded onto the consumer map scene, do you think are we seeing a lot of cheap knockoffs and poorly designed maps out there?
No, I don't believe so. I think there's a very broad market now of different sorts of mapping applications that meet the needs of different niche markets. There's a lot of competition in the marketplace of products similar to Google Maps. I think actually there's a big selection of mapping. Perhaps mapping's more widely available than it ever has been in the past. Now, you could say as a result of that, it's also easier for people to produce maps, and some of those maps might not be particularly useful. There is a lot of art and science in cartography, and that's something that you do need to understand and be trained in to produce good quality maps. But overall, I'd say we're much better off by having more maps available.
And do you think for the benefit of our users, could you give them a few tips on how to use Google Maps more efficiently?
Well, one of the things that can be most useful is logging in. And if you have a Google account, it will then automatically know where your home is, where your office is. It will start to understand the choices that you make in terms of how you travel, and can make the experience a little bit more personalized. I travel an awful lot in my life. And because I've logged into Google Maps, it knows where I'm staying in particular hotels. So it'll actually put that on the map for me, say, okay, for these 2 days you're staying on this hotel, and it appears in my own personalised version of the map. Now, you don't have to do that, but if you do, it makes the experience that bit better, I think.
I just want to talk a little bit about mapmaker. I think personally that's a great tool because it suggests edits. So why is Google deciding to shut it down in 2017?
Well, we're not shutting it down as such as perhaps refocusing efforts in terms of different ways of getting that feedback. There was a mapmaker community that was very rich in collecting information. But actually what we want to do is to make that process of capturing data something that everyone that uses Google Maps on their day-to-day life can do. So the focus is on, as you use Google Maps, you can provide us with the corrections as you go along.
GPS has always been one of the biggest battery drainers on smartphone devices. How do you think future iterations can improve upon that?
Well, I think we talk about GPS as a generic term now to say, how can my device know where I am? But actually what's happening most of the time is you're using a combination of GPS and Wi-Fi and cell tower triangulation, and all those technologies coming together are working out where you are. So the GPS part of that is really probably only used when you're outside. Now that's improving by the new constellations of satellites coming on stream. So there are global constellations like Galileo, there's the local constellation here the Indian government have created. All of those improve the number of satellites there are in the sky, which means you'll get a more accurate fix more quickly. So I guess it all makes the location that bit more reliable. But much of our interest is in being able to locate you when you're indoors or you're going between buildings, and then those other technologies are more important.
What do you think is the scope of GPS in the context of Internet of Things? Do you think that's a very important partnership?
I think it's part of it, but again, it's just one of those technologies that can locate you. One of the disadvantages relatively of GPS technology is it's quite power intensive. So perhaps we also need to look at other mechanisms for identifying where something is in relation to something else, which is one of the kind of key use cases in the Internet of Things. So we've looked a lot at Bluetooth technology, beacons, other ways of identifying where you are when you're dynamically moving inside a building. So I think again all of those technologies come together, and I think that's the kind of the big trend, is that we have these kind of core technologies like GPS, but actually where most of the excitement comes is the fusion of different technologies together.
And what's the future of Google Maps and the autonomous industry? Is that a bright future? Where do you see that being headed?
I'm not so sure. I mean, it's not my part of the business, the autonomous vehicles.
Just your perspective on it, though.
I think there's going to be a huge potential for autonomous vehicles, and autonomous vehicles, if you think about it, have to navigate around the world just in the same way that we do. So you need that infrastructure of navigation data. But it's still relatively early days. But I hope in my old age that I'm going to be driven around in a vehicle that's autonomous, just so I won't have to drive. I'm looking forward to that.
Right. So also, what advice and guidelines can you offer to app developers out there who want to work in this field, and how can they make their product much more relevant?
I guess my advice would be to make use of the platforms that are there. Across all of the mobile operating systems, there are very good mapping technologies that you can start to build from. And then obviously the most important piece of advice, and the one that's the same for any app developer, is really understand your market. Understand what's the problem you're trying to solve, and do you have a unique approach to solving that, and really focusing on doing that really well. I think it's much easier to do that now than it has been at any point in our past, because all of these platforms are in place, all of these SDKs and toolkits are there. But at the end of the day, you really need to know your problem and come up with a nice solution to solving that.
Could you possibly tell us what's in future for Google Maps? Are you not at the liberty to discuss that?
No, I'm not.
That's what I thought. But I thought it was worth a shot, so I thought I'd give it a try.
Good try. No, I mean, it's to drill down and to just keep improving the product. It's a very popular product now, but we know there's plenty more we can do to make it something that's even more useful to our users.
Okay, and I think we'll leave it there for now, but thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your trip in India.
Thank you.